document. I can't write the amount of words that are in those 33. I couldn't write it. You know, in the Roman Catholic Church uses the writings of St. Thomas Aquinas, and they're volumes, you know, thousands and thousands of pages through volumes of books. And this waiver covers everything in all those volumes if you understand what the words mean. So, are we ready to go? All right.
So, yeah. 3, 2, 1. So it's 9 p.m. January 1st, 2016. Sitting with Kurt Kallenbach, or Curtis Kallenbach.
Or Curtis.
Curtis. Welcome, brother Curtis. Two topics to touch on: the waiver and the word God, big G. So if you want to start by introducing A, what the waiver is, and B, your path to selecting the amount of words.
Well, the waiver is a culmination or it's a dissemination of all the stuff that I've learned up to now. And I wanted something that would relieve me of a burden that I never asked for. And that's the concept of to waive something is to basically relinquish or let go of a right or a claim. I mean, so I'm letting go of something. When you waive something off, you're letting it pass or you're letting go of it. You're releasing it from your world, so to speak. So the waiver to me is everything that I don't want to make a claim upon. So I'm letting go of even maybe rights or privileges or whatever of something that I never really wanted to begin with. So that's what it is. That's what I wrote that for. I wanted to let go of something or let go of everything without even naming it. If I can write something that takes my hands off of or removes a burden from me without naming what that burden is. That's what this waiver is. That's what I wrote this for. And it seems to be, it has some authority because a couple of people have entered it into court cases and, you know, didn't attend a court case because once you waive a claim, you don't have the authority to even show up. I mean, the only people that have authority to show up at these court cases are those that have a claim upon a power of attorney or something along those lines. And if you don't have that, then you're trespassing. So you can't show up in these courtrooms if you put a waiver into that case because you're letting go of your right to attend, so to speak. But anyway, a couple of cases have been dismissed because of this waiver. You know, in one instance, a judge actually got up and left the bench because she couldn't stand in the presence of those words, those specific words. So anyway, I'll recite the words so at least we know what we're talking about and it's short. It won't take me very long to get through this. So again, the waiver, you can see the waiver, a scanned copy of the waiver at trustingcontract.wordpress.com. A friend of mine set that site up for me years ago and has basically put a lot of my work over the last couple of years up at that site for me, so I don't have to mess with it. Anyway, thank you, Cynthia. But the words of the waiver are as follows. From the beginning, with God as my witness, I, Curtis, a true man of God, acknowledge all blessings given by God, repent all transgressions against God, and waive all claims without God. And that's it. 33 words if you count the title. And the reason there's only 33 words is because there needs to be no more and there can be no less. It's as large as it needs to be and it's as small as it can be. Nothing's left out and there's no additional words. So it's the best document I've ever seen. Anyway, so you wanted to talk about God, number one. or somewhere in there, but,
Yeah, let's go to, so by using this in court, as we discussed in previous discussions, you're not advising anybody to take this document or these words and use them for their own use, correct?
no, I wouldn't, I mean, unless you know what they mean,
Right.
I wouldn't take somebody else's words as my own unless I understood those and made them my own. I mean, at my core, in my heart. Now, if you were to use it, if you understood it and you felt the same way about it, then I absolutely use it. But, obviously we're not talking about giving legal advice or any of that kind of stuff. But again, this is not legal. This is a godly thing. And that's where these courtrooms, they can't go there. When your judge is God, you can't. The court, they have to vacate, so to speak. Anyway, we're not going to be able to get through it. I know it's only 33 words, but it'll be for another time. But there's just the very first two parts of that waiver. It says, "In the beginning," and then, "With God as my witness." If we just try to cover those tonight, that's about as far as I think we can go. I was shocked myself. The concept of "in the beginning," I mean, if you go into Genesis biblically, by the way, everybody already knows that I'm not a religious guy, but when you learn, some simple concepts about God or what have you, then you can start using God as a word when it makes sense to you. I never could use the word God before because any religious connotations bothered me. I didn't want to think of something, some nebulous, bearded, white-haired man in the clouds. That didn't make any sense to me, so I never wanted to deal with it. But, so yeah, let's just start with "in the beginning." Biblically, you see it in Genesis, but ultimately, I like to use evidence that by, let's say, the Roman Catholic Church supplies. And there's a document that Pope Boniface the Eighth put out November 18th, 1302. So this is some old stuff, and it's in this particular document, or I think it might even be a papal bull. I'm not sure, but it's Unum Sanctum, and Unum Sanctum, about the fifth paragraph, I think about the fifth paragraph down, was talking about the concept of beginning, in the beginning, as opposed to beginnings plural. Now, Bob, how many times did you come out of your mother's womb?
I believe just one.
Yeah, one time. So we arrive in this plane of existence one time. So there can be only one beginning for us. And that's, I think, again, I'm not promoting Catholicism, but in Unum Sanctum, by Pope Boniface, he's very specific that there can be only one beginning. And here's the words verbatim out of Unum Sanctum in about paragraph 5. It says, "Therefore, whoever resists this power thus ordained by God resists the ordinance of God," which is Romans 13:2, "unless he invent, like Manichaeus, two beginnings, which is false and judged by us heretical. Since according to the testimony of Moses, it is not in the beginnings," plural, "but in the beginning that God created heaven and earth," which is Genesis 1:1. Furthermore, we dare proclaim, we define that it is absolutely necessary for salvation that every human creature be subject to the Roman pontiff. So they're saying that, the Roman pontiff, the Pope, is basically the ruler over every human creature. What's funny about that is human creature. They're very specific that it says necessary for the salvation that every human creature be subject to the Roman pontiff. The human creature is the second arrival. You arrived first, came out of your mother's womb one time, but other material followed you out, which is the afterbirth. That's a second arrival or second beginning. And that is not man, that is the human creature, the formless DNA mass that comes out of mother after you, man. And that's what they're saying is this second beginning is not godly. It's heretical. It's a heresy. So I'm using the church's own words here, that anything other than you is considered an alternate beginning. There's you and then everything that follows you, and that's not godly. So that's why I talk about the afterbirth. I talk about, the legal term, born alive. Because everything that comes out of mother, you and everything that follows you is considered a legal person or a legal personality. So, and that's how they capture this afterbirth and give it the creature aspect or the legal aspect, the other additional. It's sort of like you having a twin brother follow you out. You're sort of your evil twin. There's the good guy, there's the Christ, so to speak, and then there's the second thing that comes out, that beastly creature, that afterbirth anti-you or anti-Christ. So you got to take the good with the bad type of thing. That's what they did. So again, in the waiver, it says in the beginning. It's very clear. There's a singular event, a singular beginning, which is not heresy, even in the eyes of the Roman Catholic Church. So that's why I wrote it that way, because of unum sanctum. Now, probably more important is the concept of God itself. Now, and I'm not obviously here to offend anybody, but I think most people, when they speak of God, they go into this nebulous fantasy land of wishful thinking. And it's pretty obvious, if you want to think of God as a creative force, then you have to realize that God is not singular. And I can prove that. And it's kind of fun to think this way. I mean, I like people to think outside the box, but I think that you should be so far outside the box that even outside the box is almost inside the box, if you know what I mean. I always use the example of the concept of time and space. Now, when I say space, I don't mean, where the stars are located. I'm talking about space that you occupy. Right now, I'm looking at you across the table here, and you occupy space. Your physical form occupies so much space. So when I say space, I'm not talking about, the sun and the moon and all that stuff. Although I could be talking about a heavenly body, or a celestial body that's occupying space. So your physical existence occupies space. And it also is in a moment in time, the present moment. So it has time and space, an element of time and space to it. So let's think about it. Let's make this a little bit fun. I want you to imagine yourself standing in front of a full-length mirror. I'm going to try to make this very, very simple. You're standing in front of a full-length mirror, let's say 10 feet away. So when you look at that image in the mirror, the amount of time it takes from light to travel from your eye to the mirror and back to your eye. In other words, for you to receive that image of you, the reflection in the mirror, time passes. So from your eye to the mirror, back to your eye. It's only a moment, but time does pass. So what you're actually looking at in the mirror is in the past. Now that's a hard concept for people to consider. They think that when they're looking in the mirror that they're seeing the present moment, but they're not. Everything in that mirror is in the past. By the same token that I'm looking at you right now about 2 feet away from me, and the amount of time it takes light to go from my eye to you back to my eye is still time. So even when you're 2 feet away from me, I'm looking at you directly, and I still am looking at you in the past. We cannot see anything in the present because of the amount of time it takes light to travel. So nothing we actually physically see is in the present moment. It's always in the past. Same with anything that we hear. Now, sound travels slower than light. So everything we hear is in the past. Now here, the reason I bring that up is because you and I cannot occupy the same moment we can occupy the same moment, but we can't occupy the same space. So I'm sitting here looking at you over there, but you're sitting here to you, looking at me over there. So we are truly the center of the universe for our own existence. Everything emanates from us and moves outward from our center. We are truly self-centered, and our reality is from us outward in every direction. So it's almost like a sphere. We're the center of a sphere moving outward. All experience is moving in all directions. Now, the reason I bring all this up is because there is one moment, only one moment, where two human beings occupy exactly the same space in exactly the same moment in time. There's only one time ever that occurs. Do you know what that moment is? Of course you do. What is it? Conception. So, father's sperm, father's genetic material, a piece of father, enters the ovum, the egg of mother. And now mom and dad physically occupy exactly the same space in exactly the same moment. It's called a singularity. And that singularity is the only time two human beings merge in time and space. And what is the that is the testament of the will for those two beings to be together. The outcome is the testament or the product of that fertilization, and that would be you or me or the baby. So we are the singularity. We're evidence of a singularity. And then from that moment, that's why people need to understand that you are the product or the creation of whom? Who created you? Mom and dad. So your creator is not a creator at all, it's creators. You have, in this physical existence, this biological realm that we live in, you have creators, plural, mom and dad. Without dad, you don't exist. Without mom, you don't exist. You need both of those to be here. So when I cringe when I hear people talk about their creator as singular, because by default that concept of creator means one. Now what's funny is in the world that they create, the two-dimensional XY axis world of the page, the flat plane existence, there can be a creator. It's called an immaculate conception. Now an immaculate conception is, the word immaculate means perfect and conception means idea. So it's a perfect idea. And they talk about Jesus or the character of Jesus being an immaculate conception, where Mary, Mother Mary, and Joseph, that whole story of the Christ being born, Mary gave birth to the Christ without any biological father. And that's not physically possible. So what they're saying is that the Christ was born of Mary and no biological earthly father. Well, that's what the afterbirth is. The afterbirth doesn't have a biological father. It's the product of mother's DNA. So the second coming, the so-called Christ, is of Mary, the DNA of Mary, mitochondrial DNA, or the bloodline of Mary, the mother, and no biological father. So now, the funny thing about that is that the story of that second coming, that other thing, is true if you believe in a creator, singular. Now, if you talk about God as a creator, or God or a creator being singular, it would by default, it could be true, it is true, if you're going after the afterbirth. If you're only speaking of the afterbirth has a singular creator, mother. Because when the fertilized egg begins its cell division, that has the genetic material of mom and dad, mother herself, with her own DNA or her own product, starts to create tissue to help support the growth of that. Well, I'm going to use the word embryo. It's a little early for that, but of that child, that future child. So everything mother creates is through mother's DNA only. And that product comes out after you do, after the baby comes out, and that's mother's DNA alone. So there is no biological father to mother's DNA or the afterbirth. I'm not talking about the chorion, and I don't want to talk about that tonight. But I'm saying that the afterbirth itself, the maternal placental material is female only. There is no biological father. And now that creature, that human creature that they speak of in Unum Sanctum, is immaculate. It's an immaculate conception. There is no biological father to it. So you got two things going on here. A fully formed baby, a head, 2 arms, and 2 legs. Sometimes it's used, if you go to some of the ancient doctrines and things like that, you might see it in the Vitruvian Man. It shows it's the 5-pointed star with the upright star, not the upside-down star, but the upright star, which the 5-pointed star also is a divine proportion. So the Vitruvian Man, the 5-pointed star, all that stuff fits in the fully formed baby, the mother and father, the child, are the product of mom and dad. This stuff is not very difficult. We tend to make it difficult. The second mass that comes out of mom has only mother's material, and that's a problem because that's an immaculate conception. There is no biological father, and sadly that's what usually we deal with in the birth certificates and things like that. But again, that's for a different time, a different night. So the waiver, when it says in the beginning, it's singular. There is no second birth to you. There is no second coming. There is a singular event. You come out, you're the firstborn, legitimate child of mom and dad. That's the beginning, singular. That's why I said it that way in the waiver. In the beginning, with God as my witness. And again, now that who is God to your biological existence? Mom and dad. It has really nothing to do with anything beyond mom and dad. With God as my witness. God sadly sounds singular, but God is plural. Mom and dad. Unless you choose to make it something else, which doesn't make any sense. That would be nonsense. So, yeah, that's just that alone. If people would understand the simplicity of who created you, mom and dad. Now, there is one other element, and there's no reason to go too far into this, but at some point in that cell division, an organ forms inside your biology, and that is the heart. And the heart, when it's fully formed or fully functional, there's a node called the sinoatrial node, and the sinoatrial node is where the heartbeat is located. The actual signal, the heart signal, emanates from the SA node, the sinoatrial node. That signal is received when the heart's ready, and whether that signal comes from the Schumann resonance of the earth, the actual heartbeat of the earth, so to speak, or the heartbeat, or a concept called entrainment, like to mother's heartbeat, something, where the beat just starts because mother's heart is beating. Or maybe it comes from Sirius or somewhere out there in the heavens. A signal comes into the body and starts that heartbeat. Now, when that signal stops, that transmission is what I would call it. When that transmission, that signal it stopped being received, then the heart stops beating. And my personal belief is when the heart stops beating, the signal leaves the body, the spirit leaves the body, and that's the end of the life of that body. Now, remember, the heart ultimately is a pump. If they keep your oxygenating your blood and keep pumping that blood through the biological material, the body can stay alive. But that doesn't mean there's a spirit in that body. Again, so I don't like talking about this because that's where people get a little weird. But the reality is, the essence of your existence, the biological essence of your existence comes from mom and dad, period. There's nothing special about that other than the fact that the one sperm turned into you. Out of the millions of possibilities, there you are. What is that old saying? There by the grace of God go I. Whether it's external or internal, there you are. So I like the simple idea of God in those terms, mom and dad. And now when you go into God's law, let's call it the Ten Commandments or something like that, now it doesn't seem so crazy. And if mom and dad are ultimately God, so to speak, then it makes our lives pretty easy. It makes our lives pretty easy. And if mom and dad truly are God in our in our biological existence, then where does something like the church fall? Where does anything external to mom and dad get any authority whatsoever? And I don't think there is any. I think that that singularity that becomes you, that center of the universe, if you understand that, then you are the authority. You have it all. You have everything you need to run your life, period. And the waiver acknowledges that. It acknowledges God. It acknowledges the blessings given by God. It acknowledges everything. You know what I mean? It's a beautiful document, but first you got to be comfortable with the word capital G, God. And I wasn't for a long time. I thought I couldn't get rid of those religious connotations. But so that's really just without knowing God, without understanding the beginning, singular. There's a big hole in this document. So again, in the beginning, with God as my witness, I, Curtis, a true man of God. Now, even the concept of God is life. That devoid of that thing. First of all, if you don't have a body, if you don't have a right to claim your biological body, you don't have what it takes. You don't have a place for that spirit to exist. If you don't have a legitimate claim to your biology, home is where the heart is, and that's the home of the spirit. Your spirit resides in your heart. If somebody else has a legitimate claim to your body by title, let's say, then they have a legitimate claim to your home, the home of your spirit, the house of the holy, so to speak. And that's why it's important these kinds of things are important to understand. They're not hard to understand if we can get rid of our belief systems, these erroneous belief systems we've been brought up with. But that's how we're controlled, That's how we're controlled. Nobody has a right to the land of my soul, ever. I guess that would be some form of slavery. Anyway, now what?
What are besides searching every term in the waiver, what would you recommend?
Well, I would always recommend to anybody, if they really want to get a grip on what's happening, is get yourself a Black's Law 5th edition. That's my favorite. There are great, anything beyond the 5th starts to get a little bit goofy to me, and anything before that isn't enough. Black's 5th, biblically, obviously it'd be nice to have a Bible, but I think that the whole story comes out just in the legal terms itself. Because there's only 33 words in the waiver, you can see the important words. They're all important ultimately, but acknowledge all blessings given. Now, don't ever assume that you know these words. To acknowledge something is one thing. Even the word, the gift, the concept of something being given to you. If I give you something, there can't be any encumbrances. There can't be any attachments. A gift is a gift. If you gave me, a piece of land that has $1 million debt attached to it, it's not much of a gift. It's like handing me an anchor while when I'm overboard. I'm going to drop to the bottom of the sea and die. It's not a gift when it's so harmful. So, acknowledge all gifts, all blessings given by God. A blessing given by God, remember, if God is mom and dad, and of course you got that spirit thing happening in your heart, but if God is mom and dad, that one of the major gifts that they gave you was your physical body. And that physical body has, the physical attribute of a physical brain. It has the heart, the home of the spirit. So, but remember that physical body is the kingdom, your kingdom. It's, you know what I mean? It's your kingdom. And all the product, or some people would use the word usufruct, or the fruit of that kingdom, is everything your mind can come up with, anything your mind can conceive intellectually. So intellectual property is a product of your kingdom. That's why it's important to lay claim to your body, your kingdom, or to acknowledge that blessing, that particular blessing, your physical body. Another thing, not just intellectually, but what about physically? The fact that you can do physical work, labor, whatever, anything you can do physically, whether it's running or shoveling or, you know what I mean? Any of that stuff, any product, anything you can produce with your body, a snowball, anything you can produce with your body, again, is your property, as long as you're not taking it from somebody else. And finally, genetically, your body produces genes that when, you get with somebody else, you could produce another child, another baby, an offspring. And so that is an extension of your land, your kingdom. So like my son would be an extension of my kingdom. So if you look at the claim upon the blessing, just your physical body. I'm not even talking about consciousness or anything like that. I'm talking about intellectual, physical, or genetic property that is produced through that one singular blessing, your body. And it's private. Private property, that's not taxable. So when you start to understand the simple side of this, you realize that all of the symptoms, everything that we believe are problems, they go away when we know the truth of the matter. The matter being the biology, your DNA, your physical existence. That's the matter. What's the matter? My body's the matter. My body's the matter. So, yeah, acknowledge all blessings. There's only 33 words in this damn thing. And if you get yourself a good law dictionary and maybe look up the words on, Merriam-Webster online and stuff like that, you'll start to see a picture, form in your head. I can't say enough about it. It's the best document I've ever seen, ever. What was the other question? Did you have another question? Okay. That's it? Good.
What?
Yeah, because, this thing,